What happens when a quiet dinner turns into a battle for justice? Sarah Martinez had been looking forward to this evening for weeks. After 18 months of deployment overseas, the 32-year-old Navy SEAL finally had a chance to enjoy a quiet dinner at her favorite Italian restaurant in downtown San Diego. She had traded her military uniform for a simple black dress and comfortable flats, wanting nothing more than to blend in with the civilian crowd and savor some normalcy. The restaurant buzzed with the typical Friday night energy. Families occupied the larger tables, while couples shared intimate conversations over candlelit meals. Sarah chose a corner booth, appreciating the strategic view it offered of the entire dining room. Old habits died hard, even during peacetime. She had just ordered her favorite dish, chicken parmesan, when she noticed three men at the bar becoming increasingly loud and aggressive. They appeared to be in their late 20s, dressed in expensive suits that suggested successful careers, but their behavior told a different story. Empty beer bottles cluttered their section of the bar, and their voices carried across the restaurant with disturbing comments about other patrons. Sarah tried to focus on her meal when it arrived, but her training made it impossible to ignore potential threats. The men had been making crude remarks about several female diners, their voices growing bolder with each drink. The restaurant staff seemed hesitant to intervene, perhaps intimidated by the men's aggressive posture and expensive appearance. How far would you go to protect a stranger when no one else steps up? 20 minutes into her meal, Sarah watched as the three men approached a young couple at a nearby table. The woman appeared to be in her early 20s, clearly uncomfortable, as one of the men leaned over her chair, making inappropriate comments. Her male companion, obviously nervous, asked them politely to leave them alone. Instead of backing down, the situation escalated quickly. The largest of the three men, standing well over 6 feet tall with broad shoulders, grabbed the young woman's arm and pulled her from her chair. His companions laughed as she struggled to break free, their behavior drawing shocked stares from other diners. Sarah felt her muscles tense as she assessed the situation. The restaurant staff had retreated behind the counter, apparently calling for help, but she knew police response time could be several minutes. The young woman's eyes met hers across the room, filled with terror and pleading for assistance. Without hesitation, Sarah stood from her booth and walked calmly toward the confrontation. Her years of training had taught her to remain composed under pressure, and she approached the group with measured steps. The men were so focused on intimidating their victims that they didn't notice her approach until she was directly behind them. "Excuse me," Sarah said in a clear, steady voice that cut through the restaurant's tension. "I think you gentlemen need to step away from the lady and return to your seats." The three men turned toward her, their faces showing a mixture of surprise and amusement. The Arango leader, still gripping the young woman's arm, looked Sarah up and down dismissively. Her petite frame, standing barely 5'4" tall, seemed to amuse them greatly. "Mind your own business, sweetheart," the largest man sneered, tightening his grip on the frightened woman. "This doesn't concern you. Go back to your dinner before you get hurt." Sarah remained perfectly still, her voice never wavering. "I'm asking you nicely to release her and leave these people alone. This is your opportunity to walk away peacefully." The second man, emboldened by alcohol and his friend's aggression, stepped closer to Sarah. "Or what? What's a little girl like you going to do about it?" He reached out to push her shoulder, clearly intending to intimidate her into backing down. That single touch was all Sarah needed to justify her response. In her world, any unwanted physical contact constituted an assault, and she was authorized to defend herself and others accordingly. The men had no idea they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The moment the second attackers' hand made contact with Sarah's shoulder, 15 years of intensive military training kicked into overdrive. Her body moved with the fluid precision of someone who had spent countless hours perfecting hand-to-hand combat techniques in some of the world's most dangerous environments. In one lightning-fast motion, Sarah grabbed the man's wrist, twisted, it sharply to the right, and used his own momentum against him. The man found himself face down on the restaurant floor before he could comprehend what had happened. The sound of his body hitting the ground echoed through the suddenly silent dining room. The ringleader, shocked by the speed of Sarah's response, released his grip on the young woman and lunged towards Sarah with both fists raised. He had at least 60 pounds and 8 inches of height advantage, but Sarah had trained with men twice his size in conditions far more challenging than a restaurant floor. She sidestepped his clumsy attack effortlessly, using a basic evasion technique she had mastered during her first year of SEAL training. As he stumbled past her, she delivered a precise strike to a pressure point on his neck, causing his legs to buckle instantly. He crashed into an empty table, sending dishes and glasses cascading to the floor. The third attacker, realizing his friends were no longer standing, attempted to flee toward the restaurant's front entrance. Sarah had anticipated this reaction and positioned herself to block his escape route. When he tried to push past her, she employed a simple but effective defensive move, redirecting his forward momentum and sending him sprawling across the entryway. The entire confrontation lasted exactly 15 seconds, though to the stunned restaurant patrons, it seemed to unfold in slow motion. 3 aggressive men who had been terrorizing other diners now lay groaning on the floor, completely incapacitated by a woman who appeared to be enjoying a quiet dinner alone. Sarah immediately checked on the young couple who had been the initial targets of the harassment. The woman was shaking but uninjured, while her companions stared in amazement at the scene that had just unfolded. "Are you both okay?" Sarah asked the couple, her voice returning to its earlier calm tone as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. "Do either of you need medical attention?" The young woman shook her head, still processing what she had witnessed. "How did you... who are you?" she stammered, looking between Sarah and the 3 men who were slowly attempting to regain their composure. Before Sarah could respond, the restaurant manager approached cautiously, his face pale with concern. "Miss, thank you for helping, but I need to call the police. This kind of violence in my establishment," he began, clearly worried about potential liability issues. "Please do call them," Sarah replied calmly. "These men assaulted other patrons and attempted to assault me. I defended myself and others using only the necessary force to stop the threat." Her measured response reflected years of training in rules of engagement and the legal justifications for defensive actions. The largest attacker, nursing what appeared to be a bruised ego more than any serious injury, struggled to his feet and pointed accusingly at Sarah. "She attacked us. We were just talking to people and she went crazy on us." His voice cracked slightly, the earlier bravado completely gone. Several other diners immediately contradicted his version of events, having witnessed the entire confrontation from beginning to end. An elderly gentleman at a nearby table stood up and addressed the manager directly. "Young man, I saw everything," he declared in a firm voice. "These 3 thugs were harassing that young lady and her boyfriend. When this brave woman asked them to stop, they tried to intimidate and assault her. She only defended herself after they put their hands on her." A middle-aged woman dining with her family nodded in agreement. "My daughter was afraid to go to the bathroom because of how these men were behaving. This lady saved the evening for everyone here." Other patrons murmured their support, creating a clear picture of what had actually occurred. The 3 attackers exchanged worried glances, realizing their attempt to reframe the situation had failed completely. Multiple witnesses had observed their aggressive behavior throughout the evening, and several people had already begun recording videos with their smartphones. Within minutes, the restaurant filled with the sound of approaching sirens. 3. Police officers entered through the main entrance, immediately assessing the scene before them. Broken dishes scattered across the floor, overturned furniture, and 3 disheveled men sitting against the wall painted a clear picture of what had transpired. Officer Maria Rodriguez, a 15-year veteran of the San Diego Police Department, took charge of the situation. She had responded to countless bar fights and domestic disturbances, But something about this scene struck her as different. The woman standing calmly near the corner booth didn't fit the typical profile of someone involved in a restaurant brawl. "Can someone explain what happened here?" Officer Rodriguez asked, pulling out her notepad and surveying the crowd of witnesses. Before anyone could respond, the largest attacker jumped to his feet and began pointing dramatically at Sarah. "Officer, that woman is dangerous. She attacked us without provocation. We were just having a friendly conversation with some people, and she went berserk on us." His two companions nodded eagerly, seeing an opportunity to avoid responsibility for their actions. "She knows some kind of martial arts or something," the second man added, nursing his sore wrist. "She could have killed us. We want to press charges for assault." Officer Rodriguez looked skeptically at the three men, then at Sarah, who remained perfectly composed throughout their accusations. The size difference alone made their story questionable, but she had learned not to make assumptions based on appearances. "Ma'am, what's your version of the events?" she asked Sarah directly. Sarah stepped forward and spoke in the same measured tone she had maintained throughout the evening. "These three men were harassing other patrons, specifically the young couple over there." She gestured toward the victims. "When they physically grabbed the woman and refused to release her after being asked to leave them alone, I intervened verbally." She continued her account with precise detail. "One of the men then made physical contact with me without permission, which I interpreted as the beginning of an assault. I used only the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat to myself and the other patrons." The restaurant manager stepped forward with his own testimony. "Officer, I watched the whole thing. These three men had been drinking heavily and making inappropriate comments to female customers all evening. My staff was preparing to ask them to leave when this situation escalated." Officer Rodriguez began interviewing the witnesses systematically. Every single person who had observed the confrontation corroborated Sarah's account. The elderly gentleman provided the most detailed description, having watched the men's behavior escalate throughout the evening. "Those men were predators," he stated firmly. "They were targeting women dining alone or with companions they could intimidate." This young lady showed remarkable restraint in how she handled the situation. As more witnesses came forward, a pattern emerged that painted the three attackers in an increasingly negative light. A server revealed they had been making inappropriate comments to her throughout their meal, including crude remarks about her appearance and suggestions for meeting them after work. The young couple, who had been the primary targets of the harassment, provided their own testimony. The woman, still shaken but more composed now, described how the largest man had grabbed her arm so tightly it left marks. Her boyfriend confirmed that they had repeatedly asked the men to leave them alone before Sarah intervened. Officer Rodriguez noticed something unusual about Sarah's demeanor during the questioning. Unlike most people involved in violent confrontations, she showed no signs of adrenaline crash or emotional distress. Her breathing remained steady. Her responses were articulate and precise, and she displayed the kind of calm confidence typically associated with law enforcement or military personnel. "Ma'am, do you have any formal training in self-defense or martial arts?" the officer asked, though she suspected the answer would be more significant than a few weekend classes at the local gym. Sarah hesitated for a moment, considering how much personal information to reveal. "I have some military background," she replied, diplomatically, not wanting to complicate the situation unnecessarily. The three attackers exchanged worried glances as they realized their story was falling apart completely. Multiple witnesses, security camera footage from the restaurant's surveillance system, and physical evidence all contradicted their version of events. Officer Rodriguez's partner had been reviewing the restaurant security footage with the manager, and he approached the group with important information. "Maria, you need to see this video. It shows everything that happened, and it clearly supports the lady's account." The footage revealed the men's aggressive behavior throughout the evening, their harassment of multiple patrons, and the moment when they initiated physical contact with Sarah. The video quality was excellent, capturing every detail of the 15-second confrontation in high definition. As Officer Rodriguez reviewed the evidence, she realized she was dealing with a textbook case of self-defense. The three men had created a hostile environment, targeted innocent victims, and initiated physical contact with someone who had simply tried to de-escalate the situation peacefully. Officer Rodriguez studied the security footage carefully, replaying the crucial 15-second sequence several times. The video clearly showed the three men approaching other diners aggressively, the young woman being grabbed against her will, and Sarah's calm approach to defuse the situation. Most importantly, it captured the moment when the second attacker made physical contact with Sarah, justifying everything that followed. "Gentlemen," Officer Rodriguez addressed the three men sternly, "based on witness testimony, security footage, and physical evidence, you're being arrested for assault, battery, and disturbing the peace." She nodded to her partners, who began reading the men their rights while applying handcuffs. The ringleader protested loudly as the cuffs clicked into place. "This is ridiculous. She's the one who hurt us. Look at my friend's wrist. It's probably broken." He gestured toward his companion, who was indeed favoring his twisted arm. "Your friend's injury occurred when he initiated unwanted physical contact with this woman," Officer Rodriguez replied firmly. "She had every legal right to defend herself. You're fortunate she showed the restraint she did, or you might be facing much more serious injuries." As the police prepared to escort the three men from the restaurant, curiosity about Sarah's background continued to grow among both the officers and the remaining patrons. Her composed demeanor throughout the incident, combined with the precision of her defensive actions, suggested training far beyond typical civilian self-defense classes. Officer Rodriguez approached Sarah privately while her partners handled the arrests. "Ma'am, I've been doing this job for 15 years, and she replied diplomatically, choosing not to elaborate on her specific role. "That explains a lot," Officer Rodriguez nodded with newfound respect. "Thank you for your service, and thank you for stepping in tonight. Too many people would have just watched and done nothing." The restaurant manager, relieved that the situation had been resolved without anyone suffering serious injury, approached Sarah as the police finished their paperwork. "Miss, I want to thank you personally for what you did tonight. Those men had been making our other customers uncomfortable for hours, and my staff felt helpless to intervene effectively." He continued with genuine gratitude. "Your dinner tonight is completely on the house, and you're welcome here any time. What you did took incredible courage, and you quite possibly prevented someone from getting seriously hurt." The young couple, who had been the initial targets of the harassment, waited nearby, clearly wanting to express their appreciation. As the police activity wound down, they approached Sarah with tears of relief in their eyes. "We don't know how to thank you," the young woman said, her voice still shaky from the ordeal. "When that man grabbed me, I thought, I don't know what might have happened if you hadn't stepped in." Her boyfriend nodded emphatically. "The way you handled that situation was incredible. Where did you learn to do that? Are you some kind of martial arts expert?" Sarah smiled modestly, uncomfortable with the attention but understanding their need for answers. "I've had some training through my job. The important thing is that you're both safe now. Those men won't be bothering anyone else tonight." As the evening's excitement began to settle, other patrons approached Sarah to express their admiration and gratitude. An older couple mentioned they had grandchildren the same age as the targeted woman and felt relieved someone had intervened. A group of business colleagues dining nearby praised her quick thinking and decisive action. The restaurant gradually returned to normal operations, though conversations at every table centered on what they had just witnessed. Several patrons had recorded portions of the incident on their smartphones, and videos of the confrontation were already beginning to circulate on social media platforms. Sarah attempted to return to her interrupted dinner, but the chicken parmesan had grown cold during the commotion. The kitchen staff, having witnessed the entire event, prepared a fresh meal without being asked, refusing to accept any payment, despite Sarah's protests. As she ate her replacement dinner, Sarah reflected on how quickly a peaceful evening had transformed into a situation requiring her professional skills. She had hoped to enjoy a quiet night away from the intensity of military life, but circumstances had demanded she draw upon her training to protect innocent people. The incident reminded her why she had chosen her particular career path within the military. Her specialized training wasn't just about combat operations overseas. It was about being prepared to protect others whenever and wherever threats emerged, even during a casual dinner in a civilian restaurant. Word of the evening's events had already begun spreading beyond the restaurant's walls, with local news outlets receiving tips about the unusual confrontation from witnesses who had been present during the incident. By the following morning, videos of the restaurant confrontation had spread across multiple social media platforms, viewed by thousands of people who were amazed by Sarah's swift and decisive response. The footage showed her calm approach, the attacker's aggressive behavior, and the lightning-fast sequence that left 3 grown men on the floor within 15 seconds. Local news station Channel 8 received multiple tips about the incident, and veteran reporter Jessica Chen recognized the potential significance of the story. She had covered military affairs for over a decade and suspected there was more to Sarah's background than a simple military training explanation. "This isn't typical military combatives training," Jessica observed while reviewing the security footage with her producer. "The precision, the speed, the tactical awareness. This woman has received specialized combat instruction at the highest levels." The story gained national attention when military affairs blogger Mike Stevens, himself a former Marine, analyzed the security footage frame by frame. His detailed breakdown of Sarah's techniques identified specific moves from advanced special operations training programs that weren't taught to regular military personnel. "What we're seeing here," Stevens wrote in his viral blog post, is someone with training consistent with elite special operations forces. The way she controlled distance, managed multiple attackers, and neutralized threats while minimizing injury suggests Navy SEAL or similar special operations background. Sarah's commanding officer, Captain Robert Hayes, became aware of the media attention during his morning briefing. While the Navy generally preferred to keep its personnel out of civilian news stories, this particular incident reflected positively on military training and professionalism. "Martinez," he called her into his office the following Monday morning. "I understand you had an interesting weekend. Care to explain how you ended up as the subject of a viral video?" Sarah provided a complete debrief of the restaurant incident, emphasizing that she had acted as a private citizen defending herself and others, not as a representative of the military. Captain Hayes listened carefully, recognizing that his subordinate had handled a difficult situation with exactly the kind of judgment and restraint the Navy expected from its elite personnel. "You did everything by the book," he concluded after hearing her full account. "No excessive force, clear justification for action, protection of innocent civilians. The media attention isn't necessarily unwelcome either. It shows the public that our training produces personnel who can be trusted to act responsibly in any situation." The 3 attackers, meanwhile, found themselves facing more serious consequences than they had anticipated. David Morrison, the ringleader, worked as a marketing executive for a major corporation that prided itself on diversity and inclusion. When the company's human resources department learned about his arrest for assaulting women in a restaurant, he was immediately suspended pending a full investigation. His 2 companions faced similar professional repercussions. James Wheeler, an account manager at a prestigious law firm, found his employment terminated when partners learned about the incident. The 3rd man, Kevin Torres, worked in financial services and discovered that his employer had a zero-tolerance policy for employees convicted of assault charges. Legal experts following the case noted that the security footage made prosecution extremely straightforward. Defense attorneys for the 3 men privately advised them to consider plea agreements rather than face trial, given the overwhelming evidence of their guilt and the compelling testimony from multiple witnesses. Sarah's true identity became public knowledge when investigative reporter Jennifer Walsh obtained personnel records through Freedom of Information Act requests. The revelation that the restaurant defender was actually Petty Officer First Class Sarah Martinez, a decorated Navy SEAL with 2 combat deployments, transformed the story from a viral video into a national news phenomenon. The discovery generated intense media interest in Sarah's military career and background. Public records revealed her participation in classified operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, though specific details remained redacted for national security reasons. Her service record showed multiple commendations for valor and leadership in combat situations. Military recruiting stations across the country reported increased interest from young women inspired by Sarah's example. The Navy's Public Affairs Office began receiving requests for interviews and appearances, recognizing the positive impact her story was having on military recruitment and public perception. Sarah herself remained uncomfortable with the attention, preferring to focus on her military duties rather than celebrity status. She declined most interview requests, issuing a brief statement through Navy Public Affairs, emphasizing that she had simply done what any trained person should do when witnessing an assault in progress. "I acted to protect innocent people who were being victimized," her statement read. "This is what we're trained to do, whether in military operations overseas or as citizens at home. I hope this incident encourages others to stand up for those who need help within their own capabilities and training." The restaurant where the incident occurred experienced an unexpected surge in business, with visitors hoping to see the location, where the now famous confrontation had taken place. The manager installed a commemorative plaque near Sarah's original table, thanking her for her service and her actions that evening. The incident had transformed from a simple case of self-defense into a cultural phenomenon that sparked discussions about military training, civilian responsibility, and the appropriate response to public harassment and assault. 6 months after the restaurant incident, the ripple effects continued to influence lives across the country. Sarah Martinez had been promoted to Chief Petty Officer, partly in recognition of how professionally she had handled both the confrontation and the subsequent media attention. Her commanding officers praised her for representing the Navy's values and training standards in the most positive possible light. The legal proceedings against the 3 attackers concluded with all 3 men pleading guilty to assault and battery charges. David Morrison received 6 months in jail and 2 years of probation, along with mandatory anger management counseling. James Wheeler and Kevin Torres received similar sentences, plus community service requirements that included speaking to young men about respect for women and appropriate behavior in public spaces. The incident had profound personal consequences for the attackers beyond their legal penalties. Morrison lost his marketing executive position and struggled to find comparable employment as potential employers discovered his criminal record during background checks. Wheeler's law firm career ended permanently, effectively destroying years of educational investment and professional development. Kevin Torres faced the additional consequence of losing his financial services license, making it impossible to continue in his chosen career field. All 3 men were required to pay restitution to the restaurant for damages and lost business during the incident, as well as covering medical expenses for their own injuries. The young couple who had been the initial targets of the harassment, Jennifer and Mark Thompson, maintained contact with Sarah throughout the legal proceedings. They testified at the sentencing hearing about the lasting impact of the attack on their sense of security and their gratitude for Sarah's intervention. Jennifer Thompson had initially struggled with anxiety and fear about dining out alone, but she gradually recovered with the support of counseling and the knowledge that justice had been served. She and Mark became advocates for bystander intervention training, speaking at university campuses about the importance of standing up for others when witnessing harassment or assault. The restaurant industry took notice of the incident and its aftermath, with many establishments implementing improved training for staff on how to handle aggressive customers and protect other patrons. The Italian restaurant where the incident occurred became a model for other businesses, developing protocols for identifying and addressing threatening behavior before it escalated to violence. Sarah's story inspired the creation of several scholarship programs for young women interested in military service, particularly in special operations fields previously dominated by men. The Navy used her example in recruiting materials, highlighting the diverse skills and backgrounds of modern military personnel. A documentary filmmaker approached Sarah about creating a full-length film about women in special operations, using her story as the central narrative. While she initially declined, she eventually agreed to participate on the condition that any proceeds would support veteran assistance programs and organizations combating sexual harassment. The viral video of the confrontation became a case study in military training programs worldwide, demonstrating the importance of de-escalation techniques, appropriate use of force, and maintaining professionalism under pressure. Militaries incorporated the incident into their curricula as an example of how to apply combat training in civilian contexts responsibly. Sarah continued her military career, deploying twice more to overseas assignments where her experience and leadership proved invaluable to her teams. She never sought recognition for the restaurant incident, viewing it as simply doing what any trained person should do when confronted with injustice. Years later, when asked about that evening, Sarah reflected on how a simple dinner out had become a defining moment in multiple lives. The three men who attacked her learned harsh lessons about consequences and respect for others. The young couple she protected gained a renewed faith in the willingness of strangers to help those in need. The broader impact extended far beyond those directly involved. Thousands of people who viewed the security footage or read about the incident were inspired to take self-defense classes, volunteer for community safety programs, or simply be more aware of their surroundings and willing to help others when needed. The incident demonstrated that specialized military training, when combined with proper judgment and restraint, could make a significant positive difference in civilian life. Sarah's actions that evening embodied the military values of service before self, excellence in all endeavors, and integrity in every situation. The restaurant still displays the commemorative plaque honoring Sarah's actions, and the staff often tells the story to curious customers. The booth where she sat that evening has become something of a local landmark, reminding visitors that heroes can emerge in the most unexpected circumstances and that sometimes the most ordinary evenings can become extraordinary through the actions of individuals willing to stand up for what's right. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales from Whisper Fable. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching Whisper Fable.